Carlton have traded out Paddy Dow. It's happened. And I don't understand a thing about it. So, Pom, make it make sense, mate. What have we actually done? From what I understand, we need picks for next year for the Campriali boys, for father-son. A very cryptic tweet from Tom Morris, but can you make it make sense?
Well, I mean, luckily for Carlton fans, I've spent a lot of time dealing with the general public, which means that I'm an expert in moron. So I could translate what Tom Morris was trying to say. He did say that the future fourth went to about 8 clubs from the Dogs, but essentially this is what it looks like if you only speak one language like myself. Quite straightforward. There's a lot of things there, but people are going to instantly pick on Carlton have given away some picks. Now, a good way to indicate how future firsts are is a very similar rhythm that betting companies structure the odds next year. So if you actually look at betting companies' ladders about now to next year, you don't see a major flux unless a team goes absolutely catastrophic. So a good indication there, I always find when I'm dealing with future picks, is to work out the points. So based on next year, effectively Carlton have traded out 2 picks that are worthless. So you see the future fourth there, where Carlton is scheduled to finish next year. That actually equates as 19 matching points. So I want you to see them as matching points when you're doing with the Camparellis. Right. 19 points is worthless. It's like, you know, when you feel like when you're 18 and you feel like when you say to the barman when he says it's $10.50 and you give him $11 and say keep the change, and you think you're big dick. In reality, you've given him nothing. That's what we've done. So it works out 239 points leave Carlton.
Okay.
823 points come in.
Uh-huh. And so, those points are critical for the matching of the Camporelli boys next year.
It is, dependent on who you believe, but the Camporellis will go around that 16 to 25 mark. You're probably looking at 1,500 points matching. So Carlton there with a full collection of Arsenal are halfway there to match them. So you would find where the second Camporelli brother would go. All the picks that have come in will eat up the debt for that very quickly.
Right. So one deal has given us that complete freedom of thought for next year.
And you'd imagine with the rumours circulating about Elijah Hollands that they want to swap picks, whether that's this year's, which I believe Gold Coast have got wind that there's going to be a bid on Jake Rogers a bit earlier than when he's scheduled. So there is talk that they might trade their picks in their 30s to get the extra 200 points from Carlton's 20s. Or it could be something as simple as futures and Carlton do a little exchange there. But you look at the teams there, Essendon, they're going to be turgid next year. Fremantle, they're probably one more trade away from JL putting boots on to make a team round one. And the Dogs, Beveridge is going to be sacked by the bye, so they're going to have a bad year next year. So this actually could work out better because the book is currently overrating 2 of them 3 clubs at the moment, in my opinion. So that could even work out better. But at the moment, look at it this way. It's a net 600-point win for next year for the Camporellas that we're going to put 10 years of time into versus Paddy Dow, who would be delisted next year if he stayed for a year.
Yep. Well, that was the other alternative. Well, he wasn't sticking around anyway. It didn't seem anyway. This was going to get done. There was a bit of posturing with St Kilda and Sauce. Is the reason why this had to go through a 4-team deal because we just couldn't get a direct deal done with the Saints? Or did you think this was always going to be the way it was going to get done?
Me and Let Dog actually had a trade very similar to this, which actually worked out the same on points this year. I didn't think the futures, I didn't get the inclination, but all sides wanted to do futures, particularly looking at what Essendon did. However, you can see what Essendon have done here. So Essendon have manipulated the system. If you're looking at Ponzi schemes, Essendon are a Ponzi scheme at the moment. So they have cheated the system to allow Saints to get a ridiculously good pick for a guy that's piss. And what they've done is they've effectively got that pick back by paying him way too much cash.
Right.
in that pick 35. So that's probably the difference of Jade Gresham. Now, I would have suspect if the AFL had allowed the deal that was suggested, pick 21 goes straight back to Essendon, 17 clubs would have been like, hang about, this is highlight robbery. Even Ned Kelly had the audacity to put a mask on. They've basically roped Carlton and Dogs into this deal where they've mutually benefited. Imagine this as Wolf of Wall Street, and Leonardo DiCaprio said, we're going to rip off this old guy, but you get a Jaguar. That's what Carlton have done. It's not very ethical, but they have benefited from it. And everyone in this trade has won. But the real winners of this are Essendon, because even though they've blown their salary cap out, they have somehow managed to claw back that Jade Gresham compensation.
Yeah, right. What a fascinating way to get a deal done for an uncontracted player.
If this was geopolitics, this is the kind of stuff America go to war for. This kind of trade, just so you know what Essendon have done. I mean, Biden would be in the UN demanding sanctions against the Essendon Bombers. But it's a deal. But from a Carlton perspective, people are going to slate it because people think that Paddy Dow is the second coming of Chris Judd, which is fair enough. You're entitled to. But in reality, this is a business. And it's a business for Paddy Dow, more importantly. He's the more important than the football club when I look at a trade, because it's his career. At the end of the day, he can either go and work at Coles and earn minimum wage or earn six figures being a superstar. And that's what he's got to protect. So for him, it's a great deal. For Carlton, it's a great deal for next year, because how it stood before this trade went through, Carlton would have to do two things. Now, the Doggies are the smartest football club in the land. No one's talked about it. They've cheated the system by getting a first in front of where their father-son landlocked is. They've got in front of it for one reason, right? And one reason alone, they get two bites at the cherry. So if Nick Austin's very wise, and this is what I suspect Nick Austin's going to do with the father-sons next year, he's going to get ahead of them. So he's going to get a pick in that tens. His idea is if they're going at 16 and 20, let's make the maths easy. If I can get a pick in at 10, I get to take that pick, and then the debt comes off the next pick. So I get two top 10 players. That's what the Doggies have done very smart this year. No one's talked about it. The media have ignored it, but they went up in the draft knowing that their player was going to be about 12. So if they could get in front of him, they won't get affected. They get a free hit at this draft. And it was why I believe Mr. Jordan Croft took so long to nominate the Dogs, because then it stopped. If you actually look, that trade was done before Croft nominated. There's a reason. Other clubs would have known why. It rose the value. They had all them links. He might not go. We've got too much depth. Their list manager even said it's a work in progress because we're trying to reassure him that he's got a place. That's why. So you'll see Nick Austin do some very similar, and ignore what anyone says. The Camparellis are a position that is the most drafted in the league, so it's not at risk of being bid early. No club will bid on wingers early. It's not going to happen.
So of the picks that we are going to get, that is the future third from Essendon, the future fourth from Freo, and the future fourth tied to the Dogs, which of those, if any, are relevant for Elijah Hollands, if at all?
Well, you'd imagine that next year they look at Essendon, and depending on where people think Essendon finished, there is going to be obviously we've got 2 extra picks next year with the North Melbourne picks that have been untraded. So they're now live picks. They were fictitious picks when we first thought about it. Then you've also got Lions, Adelaide, Hawthorn, Gold Coast, Brisbane, Essendon, Brisbane, and Carlton twice. So that's quite a lot of teams. That's 10 places. So they're going to be 10 places worse. You've got to let that sink in. Then deduct the matching. So you're probably looking at 5 picks worse of what they are. Essendon's pick probably is the pick that appeals to Gold Coast if you were going to do some kind of future deal. I don't think it'll be included. I could see a deal that it'd be a future second for a future third. Carlton will look at it and say, with them selections, it's probably a 5-6 point deficit for Carlton, giving it away, knowing that there's no value to Carlton other than matching. So people have got to look at this draft. It's really important when you analyse these trades, because so much has been made of the Zach Fisher trade, which is just inaccurate, and it's mindless saying it's unders when you look at Carlton, effectively, if they do a good trade next year, they have 3 top 20 picks with the Camporellis. If they don't, they've got 2 top 20 picks no matter what. So Carlton are always winning these battles. It's a bit like why Gold Coast was so active in the last couple of years with their NGAs. When you've got them, you can be a little bit creative. So this deal here, like I say, 600 points is huge for Carlton. It's huge in a matching game because that is one of the bids. That's one of the bids gone with these points.
I see. It's a bit of an intricate one because we're talking about futures and we're talking about points and we're talking about bids. But long story short, the deal's been done. Paddy Dow finds his way to St Kilda, gets himself a nice opportunity. Obviously, we wish him the very best. Couldn't quite crack into our team. The Saints get their man. The deal looks messy, but I think I know we've done a decent job of trying to lay it out so in layman's terms. When you spat it out to me over the phone before we started recording, it made no sense.
Unfortunately, they are tough. They are tough. They are very tough because obviously it's Russian roulette. So you've got to think it's Russian roulette. We are banking on finishing the same place that we did last year, if not better.
Yep.
Which the media have us, the bookies have us about one place worse, which actually helps out for these projections. So it's a real good little game within a game because we do know that Essendon are going to be poor. They're going to be probably in that bottom half section. Fremantle, the fact that they've lost more forwards and not replaced them suggests that they're going to get progressively worse. And the Doggies, it's kind of hard to work out where they are, but I suspect more of the same. And I still stand by that. I think he'll be the first coach to go next year. I think the Doggies are in for a big dip this year. So even if you go with the most conservative estimate, which at the moment the bookies haven't really changed much from this year to last, Carlton are about plus 600 points based on that. If you go with the bookies, it's like 700 points. So that is where it's a very risk-free. But no matter what happens, Carlton have given in that deal really 200 points away, 250 points, because one of them's picked is 19 points, which is literally no one's ever used them to match.
No one's going to use them. Yeah, I see. All right. Well, thanks for making it make sense, mate.
That's all right. I try.
All right. Go Blues.
Go Blues.